Alright, hello there, thrill seekers. That song was called Chinese Water Python, and it's another Robin Hitchcock song, and I believe it comes from the album I, like eyeball, although it might come from I Often Dream of Trains. It's from one of those records. I should have checked before I started making the video. And it's one of these things that I have, they say in the music trade, or musicians say, under my fingers. So you have to get the song under your fingers before you can play it, which means you just got to get it going in your fingers rather than in your mind. And it's one that I only have under my fingers. Like if I try to think of what the notes are, I get lost. So I have to just play it without thinking. And what you just heard was the best take of, I don't know how many times I did it, 15 times or something ridiculous before I got that one. And that one still wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. So I hope you enjoyed it. But that's kind of a thing. I'm not going to talk about this in this video, but it's kind of part of the Zen training is kind of getting Zen under your fingers, so you're not really intellectualizing it anymore. This is one of the reasons I keep doing these musical intros, is to kind of sort of provide that for you in a way. I don't know if it does or not, but it's something I do to kind of get something in my body rather than in my head. And one of the problems with Zen for a lot of people is it's something in their heads. And they think that it's something in their heads. They want it to be in their heads, but it's not a thing that's in your head. As much as playing that piece, you can't see the guitar over there, but anyway, it's over there. But as much as playing that piece is under my fingers, doing Zazen is kind of in your body, much more than in your head, or let's say as much as in your head. So what's going on in your head isn't the primary focus of Zen practice. What's going in your body is as much the focus in Zen practice as what's going on in your head. Alright, and yesterday I spoke about respecting your teachers, and I gave that quote from Dogen, and here's a response from one of my Patreon people. So I'm going to read it as he wrote it. Wow, this one was challenging for me. Having left a long-time Buddhist community where multiple credible in all caps, sexual assault allegations were brought against teachers at all levels of the organization, the idea of always respecting my seniors because they are my seniors is hard to swallow. In my opinion, respect is earned and lost by action. Frankly, I can't respect a Dharma teacher that traumatizes the vulnerable or covers up another teacher's reprehensible behavior unless, also in all caps, they act seriously and soberly to reconcile the behavior. Does Dogen say anything about Dharma teachers behaving badly? Well, there's a lot in that question, so let me answer the question that comes up at the end first. Does Dogen say anything about Dharma teachers behaving badly? Not as such. Not in the way I think that this person is asking for. Like, there's no chapter in Shobo Genzo detailing Dharma teachers doing bad things like sexual assault or whatever. What does it say? Yeah, sexual assault, and that's all. It doesn't say anything. Traumatizing the vulnerable and such, like covering up. There's nothing like that in there. There is, however, kind of peppered throughout Shobo Genzo and probably in other writings of Dogen's, references to bad Dharma teachers or bad monks. So it's clear that such people existed even in Dogen's time, and mostly what he says, he calls them unreliable. He might give an example or two of their teachings, usually things that are heretical, like, teaching the wrong things about reincarnation or something like that. But he does kind of imply more than that there were people out there in his time, who were much more concerned with fame and profit and sucking up to court officials and emperors and things like that, and getting positions than they were about the Dharma. He talks about teachers who have fake credentials, and he does give a little bit about how to spot fake credentials. Again, there's not a passage in Shobogenzo, how to spot fake Buddhist credentials, and with it all laid out. But here and there he mentions phony certificates of transmission that he was aware of and what they looked like. There's some pieces. I don't know exactly where to find all of these things. I only had a day to think about this, and I didn't go through all the books. Like I said, there's nothing, they're not set out in one single specific place, so they're easy to find. They're just here and there throughout different passages in his writings. So there's nothing like that. But he does acknowledge that as far as respect being earned, when I made that video yesterday, I kind of thought that went without saying, and respect has to be earned. The thing that's changed these days that's made a big difference is Dharma has become a commercial enterprise. In Dogen's day, what there was to be gained from being a Dharma teacher potentially would be you'd suck up to a king or a high official or maybe a samurai or somebody like that, and that person would support you and lavish stuff on you and give you political power and access to stuff. So in a sense there was something to be gained financially and such like, but it wasn't the same, because today what there is to be gained financially isn't that you're going to, well, I suppose you could suck up to some celebrity and then get that celebrity's patronage and gain financially that way, but more often than not, it's like a group thing. So you're gaining little bits. You're gaining power by becoming commercially successful, in which case there's not one supporter for you. It's kind of like me, like what I do. There's not one single person who supports me. There's a lot of people who donate to me, and I gain in that way. And so you can kind of go wrong there. The sexual allegation or the sexual assault sort of stuff, the other thing that's changed now is that monasteries are mixed. Men and women are practicing together. And since most people, are heterosexual, then there is more of a temptation for that kind of abuse to happen in a mixed sort of monastic situation than there is for a single gendered or single-sexed, whatever you want to go. I don't want to get into that debate, situation. So, of course, there were sexual abuse that went on man in the old days, and probably woman on woman. I would say actually there were cases of that, because those are written about in some of the really ancient Vinaya texts, sort of alluded to that kind of thing of women doing it to other women as well as men doing it to other men. And this, of course, was forbidden. Technically, I'm doing quotes, but it happened, and one of the evidences, bad grammar, I'm sorry, of this happening is that the only word that the Japanese had for homosexual up until they imported our words for homosexual, the typical word in Japan is gay, gay, spelled in katakana, but it actually sounds pretty much the same as it does in English, gay. Then the only word for that was a word that translated to something like temple boy. So there was this idea of the younger novice who came in and was abused by certain of the older monks for sexual favors. And this happened. And in fact, in the movie, what's it called? Fancy Dance, that I reviewed. If you go back through my videos, you can find me reviewing, I think I might have done it twice, this movie called Fancy Dance, which is about a guy who spends, I think, a year or more training in a Buddhist monastery. One of the things that comes up, not in the main character, but in one of the other characters, is he is basically a contemporary temple boy. He's a person who's gay to begin with, and this is what he does in the temple. This is his function in the temple. So that does exist, but I think that's a slightly different thing, because that's more. it's more along the, God, I hate to say this, but it's more along the lines of what happens in prison. People who are basically heterosexual going that way because that's what's available to them. So that's changed, and one of the reasons, of course, that monasteries were single-sexed, single-gendered, whatever you want to call it, in the old days was to try to prevent this abuse. And one of the reasons it took so long, literally thousands of years, literally over 2,000 years, for there to emerge the phenomenon of the mixed gender monastery, the mixed gender. It doesn't necessarily have to be a monastery, but a kind of a community, as a Buddhist community where often people are living together. One of the reasons it took thousands of years for that to happen is because everybody knew that this kind of stuff would happen. So I think that's something, this is a topic that I've addressed a lot in my writings, in my blogs, in the videos, so you can go back if you want to look. I don't know how to make it come up any better than you do, dear viewer, but you could go back and troll through my stuff, and I'm sure if you put in the right keywords into YouTube or into Google for my blog, you'd find me talking about this, because I've done it so often, and I do it in the book Sex, Sin, and Zen, and probably other books, I don't remember, but anyway, so I've talked about that a lot. The idea of respect having to be earned, though, I mean, that goes without saying that respect should be earned, but the other situation is if you're constantly demanding that your teacher earn your respect, that can go wrong too. Now, of course, there's the obvious stuff where there's sexual assault or some kind of bad behavior on the part, and then the teacher doesn't earn your respect. Okay, so let's leave that aside. I don't think most teachers are inclined to sexually assault or abuse their students. That's not what most people get into this for. So that's an occurrence that does happen, but that's not the general trend of things, even though Huffington Post and the New York Times and whatnot might make you think that's what's mainly going on in Buddhist centers, but that's not really what's mainly going on in Buddhist centers, although it does happen. What mainly goes on, though, is that I think what I was trying to discuss yesterday was this kind of, it's a very, I'm an American, and I also lived in two other cultures that are not America. I lived in Kenya and I lived in Japan, both for substantial portions of my life. So I have this mixed sort of background of how to deal with things. But I lived more of my life than those other places in America, so I'm mostly American. And I can see how there's a general American thing that rejects authority. And being an American, I am mostly sort of inclined to be like that, to be like an American and to reject authority. And even this is a big part of my book, Hardcore Zen. Not really my intention. It wasn't really my intention to make that such a major part of Hardcore Zen. It's that the editor really liked that, intended to enhance it, but this idea of rejecting authority. So that does come up. But more than just, it has to be tempered, okay? Sorry, I'm kind of improvising here, so I'm getting a little wonky in my speech, but it has to be tempered. There is a general, I think, we generally as Americans have a mistrust of authority and a dislike of authority. So we've got that part down. And I think we've got about as much of that as we need in most cases. What we don't have is the ability to respect a teacher. And that seems to be very much lacking in American society. And it's one of the reasons I think that Zen just often doesn't work, because people just don't know how to respect a teacher. And I've seen this happen a number of times in my own work, where it goes wrong because the person just can't bring himself to respect the teacher, to respect me, or to respect whoever is his teacher or her teacher. It kind of goes wrong because we can't find that within ourselves. So that's why I made that video. But as far as if there's sexual assault or things going on, you don't respect somebody just because of their position. They have to earn it. But as I said, that goes without saying, and in most cases there's not that much going on that you have to kind of fight against. But if you're a person like this person who wrote to me, who gets into this situation where bad things are happening, well, yeah, you gotta do something about that. And as I said, I've talked about that so much. I feel like I've belabored the subject way too much, and often one of the reasons I made the video yesterday and the video that I'm making today is because I often feel guilty for having maybe contributed a bit too much to a kind of over-skepticism, like too much skepticism. You just have to kind of trust somebody. And of course that person has to be worthy of your trust, obviously. But if you can't even bring yourself to trust anybody, it's impossible to follow this path. That's what faith is in Buddhism, and trust. And like I said, I saw that my teachers were trustworthy people and not abusers. So if you want to contribute to me saying more stuff like this, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts, and those are my main and usually only ways of making a living. That's how I earn my keep, is asking you guys for money. So I really appreciate your support, but as always, this is offered for free, so you don't gotta support me if you don't want to support me. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, what you doing? You just kind of chilling out on the rug there, looking very dignified, like a dignified Lion King kind of dog. Alright, well, I'll let you chill. Talk to you later, Ziggy. Bye.